see if they can relate recent M&A transactions to the companies they went through, and maybe we can start with Dr. Maxey with the Atlantis transaction.
I'm Randall Maxey, and until recently I was a practicing kidney specialist in Inglewood, California. Some people call that the hood. But the good thing about the hood, as far as what I do, is that kidney failure in certain minority populations is rampant. If I went to Beverly Hills to start a dialysis center, my rate of renal failure is about 500 per million population. If I go to Inglewood or South Central, that rate of renal failure may be 1,500 to 2,000 per million population. So it is a ethnically related disease, and that's how you want to track your dialysis centers. We started in about 2010 looking for capital. We thought we had a good idea. I did the road shows on Wall Street, and everybody said, "Good, Doc, that's great. It's a nice project you have. Come back when somebody believes you can get some money." And so we did spend some time with certain brokers like Magic Johnson, and we found a small company in New York called ACG, and they believed in what we did. They're a small company, about $400 million. I found a platform in Puerto Rico, 14 dialysis centers, soon to be 15, and we put a bid on them. DaVita, which is a much larger company, the second largest, I guess they're about close to 15 billion. The largest is a company called Fresenius Medical Care, which is a German company, are the two largest. So each time I would go and try to buy a platform, DaVita would come in and bid $15 or $20 million more than we thought the company was worth, but they're using 3% debt money so they could beat us around all day long. So we finally entered a transaction. I worked with M&A Capital with Tom, and February 22nd of 13, we bought this initial platform for $115 million, $45 million in debt, and $60 million in equity. And at the time we bought them, we judged that they were doing about $13 million of EBITDA. I guarantee you it was shade lower than that. But we went in and changed out management, and we now are starting to reach what our targets are. We're growing. It is our intent to buy platforms in the East Coast, in the Deep South, and in the Southwest, as well as on the West Coast. We're looking to ultimately have close to 20,000 patients under treatment. We're also doing U.S. territories that have Medicare, Medicare Advantage. And the key thing in our business is not just providing the service, because you can always find patients, but you've got to have a reliable way of being paid. So our intent is to grow this to about 1.5 to 2 billion over the next 5 years, and then become bait for one of the larger companies.
And Dr. Maxey, what do you find harder, finding the capital or finding the targets?
Finding the target is easy, but there's so much bidding and there's so much capital available, and the two largest companies, they're both so large that anytime they want to buy something, the Federal Trade Commission makes them get rid of something. But they can drive up a price in a geographical area where it doesn't become worthwhile. Capital seems to be quite available. The Congressional Budget Committee and MedPAC both have predicted that the market is going to grow another 2% to 3%. We believe that over the next 5 years in this window, the market will continue to grow. It'll be a good buy. We think that we can be in the top 5 companies in the world in that period of time. So the growth is there. It's the only business that I know in healthcare. As a doctor, I don't know what I'm going to make next month. As a dialysis unit owner, I know exactly what I'm going to make because it's a government guaranteed payment. And let me make one comment. I know what geographical area I'm in, and I know everybody's against Obamacare. However, as a doctor, Obamacare is not good. I'm going to make less money. As a dialysis center owner, this guarantees that I'm going to meet my profit goals because I'm going to get paid, my hospitals are going to get paid, and it's going to allow me to grow.
I'm Ken Gus. I've been working in aerospace for well over 30 years. I've been running companies for more than 20. Right now, I'm the CEO of a company called Convera, which is a roll-up of 6 aerospace companies owned by M&A Capital out of New York. This is right now for aerospace probably the greatest growth cycle in our history. We will not see another one like this. I don't think very many people in this room will be alive when we get to the next cycle. This is about new technologies, new engines, new airplanes, new materials. We have never seen anything like it. And obviously, the price of oil has forced all of these technical changes. The growth pattern right now for us is sensational. We're at 100 million right now. We'll probably be at 140 next year. I have a couple companies that will probably double in the next 2 years. So we have never seen a cycle like this. And yes, we will be selling to a strategic. That's our entire focus over the next 2 years. And it's interesting because right now we're actually selling 3 companies and working on buying 2 others. So we have so completely changed our forward-looking strategy as a group. So it's a very exciting time for us in aerospace. The Clune transaction, which is a previous private equity group that I worked for, M&A Capital, Clune was a real incredible success story. When they acquired it, which was for a very low price, it was basically a broke company. Good products, but just a lot of people just plain had lost their way on how to do things. We moved in there. We were able to put together a leadership team, which I consider the single most critical thing that you can possibly do in any acquisition. If the wrong people, you will not succeed. Strategy is absolutely meaningless without the right leadership team. So it's always people first and strategy second. And yes, Jack Lowe said that, not me. But I certainly believe firmly in it. We were able to very quickly, through a series of process improvements, lean improvements, release the flow of products, which immediately improved cash, which enabled us to buy a lot of things, improve our capital position, a variety of things. Our customers came back. We were able to grow the backlog. At one point, I think it was like 400 million up to over 700 million in a relatively short amount of time. In fact, this whole thing took 18 months. So, long story short, we eventually sold the precision cast parts for a multiple of 12. So, a company that had started basically at 0 EBITDA sold for $283 million less than 2 years later. So, the power of having the right people, the right processes, and putting those things together, you can move very, very fast and create great value. And right now in the aerospace industry, it's if you can't make money, you're really doing something stupid.
My name is Nasir Shakuri. I am involved with the company Applied Merchant Systems, and currently is the president of the organization. We allow merchants to accept credit cards as a form of payment. So I've been in the space for about 10 years. In my past life, working for a larger organization, we were successful in rolling up about 27 different properties, competitors, 17 businesses, and 10 portfolios of merchant accounts. We've recently assembled a team to go back into the market, which is still a fragmented space where we are in the payment processing space, to have a run and have a crack at consolidating some of the players that exist in the merchant processing space. So what is the merchant processing space? Pretty simple. We allow merchants to accept payments, credit cards, as a form of payment. We focus more on the smaller merchants. To give you an idea of what the landscape is in the payment in the merchant space. There's about 7 million total merchants in the United States. About 6.2 to 6.3 million of those are the smaller businesses. And what is a smaller business defined at? About $500,000 in total sales. So pretty micro. They represent maybe 15% of total transaction volume on an annual basis. Larger retailers, 750,000 of them, they make up close to 90%. So we focus more On the smaller businesses, 500,000 total sales, drill that down on a monthly basis, the merchants, mom and pop shops that are processing $20,000 a month in credit cards. And why is that? Main reason is margins. Our margins are very thin where we play, 80 basis points, pretty darn thin. And as you go up the food chain to the larger retailers, whether it's the Amazon online retailers or the Walmarts and the Costco's, you're probably looking at 2 to 5 basis points. Today at Applied, we have 5,000 merchants processing about $1 billion in annual sales volume. And that translates to about $30 million in revenue for us. As far as our growth strategy, really 3 approaches. One is a direct sales, W-2 type employees, less, I should say more upfront cost and more margin on the back end. We have about 90 agents around the country that sell for us. Again, pretty minimal upfront cost and also less margin on the back. And what we've gotten ourselves involved in the last year has been working with M&A Capital to execute the third strategy, which is the roll-up and acquisitions. Very fragmented space, I mentioned, about 1,500 small players out there that register with Visa, MasterCard to allow these merchants to accept credit cards. I think the last 6 months of 2013, we did our roadshow with Tom and his team. We're successful in raising a good amount of capital, about $100 million to execute our acquisition growth. Today, as far as the landscape goes, we have a few targets that are under LOI, 2 targets to be exact. EBITDA range, to give you an idea of size, about $1 million to $7 million in EBITDA pre-synergy that we can probably acquire and consolidate, and lots of synergies. It's a very scalable business, and we're the platform company. We see ourselves as a platform and having operating the administrative and finance platform to be able to consolidate some of these players. And the synergies that exist in our space are pretty remarkable. Pre-acquisition, you're going to be running at a 1 to 2 million EBITDA. Post-acquisition, you look more like a 4 to 5 with us. And that's what our strategy is, and we're pretty actively involved now, traveling around the country to identify these targets, who they are, and management team, the culture is very important to us. Finding the right verticals that we can consolidate and we can get along with, and that's very, very important. So that's what we plan on doing. We have a 3 to 5 year plan. I think our goal ultimate is to reach this 50 million EBITDA. And pretty much each acquisition that we look at today will add anywhere between 2 to 7 million in EBITDA. That's where the space that we plan.
Talking about like the last 5 years, no matter which industry you look at, oligopolies, monopolies are here. You want to sort of build something that looks interesting to those bigger guys and also sort of flies in the slipstream with those bigger guys. Trying to take those bigger guys on and hurt them, you're going to just hurt yourself. The capital's there to do it, so it's a pretty fun thing. And the management's there to do it, and that the management teams that are working for the S&P 500, they recognize that if they leave there, they get a whole lot more equity elsewhere. They'll join your little market firm and make it a very much bigger firm with the capital they can help raise. So in terms of mistakes, what would you guys look at as the biggest mistake that occurred, or things you've learned from your processes that you went through, maybe starting with Dr. Maxey again?
I would say the biggest mistake was being an entrepreneur and buying something that was worth a little bit less than I paid for it, but I was so happy to get it, I overpaid. That was my biggest mistake, but it's self-corrected.
And how did it self-correct?
We built more value into it. We've been able to add efficiencies. We went in and cut a lot of payroll. There was a lot of waste and garbage in what the previous owner was doing, and we got rid of those. Everybody had a Mercedes. When we got 500 employees, that doesn't work too well. so we've gone in with efficiencies, and the culture in a Latin culture is a little bit different. So everybody got their lunches paid for. Again, 500 lunches every day, even if it's only $5, it adds up to a lot of money. So we just cut and cut and cut. But we didn't cut quality. and we got rid of a lot of waste. Everybody's brother-in-law was on the payroll. So I think we've got things pretty much in capital now.
I'd also argue that Dr. Maxey is one of the better managers in the industry. Her name is Ruby, and she's fantastic. Basically, you need good management to make it work. Ken, can you tell us the biggest mistake and how you change that?
I don't know if you call it a mistake. I think when you acquire a company, understanding culture is vital to understand how you're going to get value out of that company. Owners who you buy, when you buy for entrepreneurs, as many of you probably know, they just think that you bought them because they're wonderful, and that all they have to do is continue to do all the things they've always done so well. And you have to remind them that they just made their money, and now it's time for us to make ours. And frequently, what happens in private equity is they don't always like to make change quickly. And then they get people like me that like to make change quickly. So I think that's a barrier that has to be overcome, and you have to be able to recognize what you have in front of you in these companies and when to make change. And so I say it's not so much a mistake, it's pace, it's speed. And either someone runs a company and is capable of growing in that company, or he's not. He or she is not, and you have to recognize that quickly. You have to move quickly to make those changes. And so I'd say if there's been a mistake in a couple of cases, I think we've just plain been too slow. We eventually realized the value out of these companies that we expect, and I think we could have realized it a lot faster.
I think for us, the biggest mistake has been not identifying additional, more than one or two targets during this acquisition strategy. My partner and I, again, working with entrepreneurs, small business owners, having the relationship for 10, 15, 20 years, we thought it's as easy as, hey Justin, known you for 20 years, I think we're ready to do a transaction. And we started talking for a 6-month time frame. A lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort went into that. And just relying simply on that relationship to think we can put a transaction together was our biggest mistake. We should have identified additional targets. We should have had backup plans where the lenders at some point get excited and they want to move forward with a transaction. And this is a specific example that we had in the fourth quarter of last year. The money was raised, we're ready to go. We performed our diligence, 3 months worth of time and effort flying back and forth, and the last minute, 11th hour, December 31st, 2013, the seller had full feet, and we didn't have a backup plan at that point. And that was the biggest mistake, to go out there and before I think M&A Capital, the biggest challenge is raising the capital and raising the money. I think post has been finding the right targets for us, and I think having a pipeline of inventory of targets that you want to look at is pretty key, and that was our biggest mistake, and we've since corrected that. We've added about 15 targets we're looking at, meeting with each one of them, flying around the country to make sure we have a more definitive agreement before we commit to pulling the trigger.
I'd like to focus on the power of the individual. The individual today is so much more powerful than any time in the past. You have a massive amount of capital they can raise and put to work. You can hire great management because they're available. They don't really want to work for the S&P 500. So the issue is that how do you put those things together and make it go? The successes that we've had all have to do with finding great management, putting capital together and making it work.